Hello and welcome to this first tutorial in our Disney knitting collection. Today we will be making the Disney silhouette square. This is a very simple square to start on. We have a stocking stitch background and a stocking stitch motif, which includes some simple increasing and decreasing. And then we have a little bit of construction. We'll be sewing it together at the end. So I hope you will enjoy this tutorial. We'll be taking you through step by step. What are we going to need for our Mickey silhouette square? We are going to need our midnight yarn. It's lovely black for our background square. Our scarlet yarn, lovely bright red for our face motif. 4mm knitting needles. A pair of scissors for trimming those ends, and a darning needle for sewing it together at the end. To start off the Mickey silhouette, we're going to work on the background square, which is knit in simple stocking stitch. And to do that, we need to cast on 30 stitches. So we're going to cast on using long tail cast on. So we need a slip knot to start. And pop that on one of our needles. And just cast on 30. And that's 30 on the needles there. For our first row, we're going to knit all the stitches. So that's row 1, knit all the stitches. Row 2, we turn our work and we're going to purl all the stitches on the wrong side of the work. So go into the stitch sift purl and purl all the stitches. That is row 2, purl all the stitches. Row 3, we're going to knit again, we're on the right side of the work, and then row 4, we're going to purl again. And that is our pattern. We're going to knit all the stitches on the front side of the work and purl all the stitches on the back. If you want, you can pop a stitch marker into the front just to remind yourself that is the front and that is which row you're going to be knitting on. But it's quite easy to see once you've worked a few rows that the knit side is lovely and smooth and the purl side has your purl bumps on it. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to repeat those 2 rows until we've got 40 rows all together, and that will be our square, and then we can cast off. That is our 40 rows done, and now we just need to cast off. So we're going to cast off on a knit row, and to cast off it's very simple. You're just going to knit the first stitch and knit the second stitch, and then you're going to pass the first stitch over the second stitch, knit one more and pass the first stitch over the second, and you're just going to keep doing this until you've cast off all the stitches. Try not to be too tight with it. Keep your stitches loose. To secure that last stitch, we're just going to open it up slightly. Then we're going to trim our yarn and thread that cut end through our loop. Pull that and that just secures the end. And that is our first background square finished. It does have a tendency to roll up, that is just the nature of stocking stitch, but we get this lovely smooth surface in which we're going to place our Mickey motif, which is what we're going to make next. For the head we're going to need our scarlet yarn and our needles. And we're going to cast on 4 stitches, so we don't need such a long tail this time. Do a slip knot and pop it on the needle and just cast on 4. So we've got 4 stitches on the needle there to start us off. And our first row, we're going to increase from 4 stitches to 8 stitches by knitting in the front and back of every stitch. Go into the stitch as if to knit, knit the stitch, don't take the stitch off the needle, go round the back and into the other side of the loop and knit again. Repeat that in every stitch, so into the front, knit the stitch, don't take the stitch off the needle, go round the back and knit again. Into the front and into the back. Front and into the back. We now have 8 stitches. Row 2, we're just going to purl. Row 3, we're going to knit front and back in the first stitch. Then knit to the last stitch. And then knit front and back in the last stitch. Row 4, we're just going to purl again. Row 5 is the same increase, so we're going to knit front and back in the first stitch, knit to the last stitch, and knit front and back in the last stitch. Purl back again. Row 6, purl. Row 7, we're going to do that same increase again. So knit front and back in the first stitch, knit to the last stitch, and knit front and back in the last stitch. Rows 8 to 12 are just knit in stocking stitch. So the next row is purl, then we have a knit row, a purl row, a knit row and a purl row. So I'll let you get on with that and I'll meet you back when we're going to start our decreases. I've just completed row 8 to 12, which is working 5 rows in stocking stitch, and now it's time to start our decreases. We're going to match our decreases to our increases to make this into the circle shape for the head. And to do that, we're going to start with a slip, slip, knit. So slip 1 stitch as if to purl, slip the next stitch as if to purl, put the needle back into both of the stitches and knit them together. Then we're going to knit to the last 2 stitches. And we're going to knit the last 2 stitches together just by going through the back of the second stitch and knitting them together. Row 14, we're going to purl. row 15, and it's another decrease row. So slip, slip, knit to start, slip, slip, needle back into both and knit together. And then we're going to knit to the last 2 stitches. The reason we do different decreases, so we have a slip, slip, knit at the start and a knit 2 together at the bottom, is because they mirror each other. And that way our head has got nice curved sides. If we did knit 2 together on both sides, one side would be more like steps rather than a nice rounded curve. So just knit 2 together at the end and purl back. Row 17, it's the same decrease again, so slip, slip, knit, knit to the last 2 stitches, and knit 2 together. Row 18, we're just going to purl again. Row 19 starts with a slip, slip, knit, slip, slip, and knit 2 together. Then we're going to knit the next 2 stitches together and the next 2 stitches together, and finally the last 2 together. We're back at 4 and it's time to cast off. We're going to cast off on a purl row, so instead of knitting the stitches we're purling. Purl the first stitch, purl the second stitch, take the first over the second, purl the next stitch and take the first over the second. Cut the end, make your loop a bit bigger and draw the end through. Pull tight. And that is our head shape done. So we've just got 2 little ears to make that are knit in a very similar way, and I'll show you that now. Our ears are knit in the same scarlet yarn. We make a slip stitch, and we're just going to start with 2 stitches this time, so there's only 1 stitch to cast on. 2 stitches there. Row 1, and we're going to knit front and back in each stitch to make 4 stitches. Whoop. And that gives us 4 stitches there. Row 2, we're just going to purl. Row 3, we're going to increase to 8 stitches this time by knitting in the front and back of each stitch again. Round and to the back, knit into the front, round and to the back, front, round and to the back. Now we're at 8 stitches, and we're going to work 5 rows in stocking stitch just to make this bit longer. So our next row is to purl, and then we're going to knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row. And I'll see you back here when we've done that. That is our 5 rows of stocking stitch done, and now we're just going to decrease to match the increases. So we start with a slip, slip, knit. Knit the next 2 stitches together, knit the next 2 together, and knit the last 2 together. Just going to purl those stitches back. Row 11, which is our last row, I'm going to slip, slip, knit. And knit 2 together. So we've got 2 stitches left on the needle, so we don't need to do a proper cast off this time. What we're going to do is we're going to take our first stitch and pass it over the second, open our stitch up, cut our yarn, thread it through the loop and pull tight. And that is our little ear made. Now we just need to make another exactly the same, and then we can get on putting our square together. Now we have our finished background square, and we've got our head motif and our 2 little ears. So it's time to sew it all together. First thing we're going to do is put the head on. So if we pop this in what looks like a central position, and then we're just going to roll out our sides just to check we're happy that is quite central, because this does tend to roll up, and top and bottom. You want to have a little bit more clearance at the top than you do at the bottom, just because we've got the ears to go on as well. So we might just move that down just a touch. But I'm happy with that placement there. So I'm just going to pin that in place. Just a couple of pins. You don't want to stretch out this motif at all. You just want to keep it nice and flat. Okay, now I'm just going to bob the ears on just to see if I'm happy with how much room I've got on the top. So the ears will point towards each corner, and it's the cast off end that attaches to the head. So they'll point to the corner, which they do, and I'm happy with the amount of space that I've got there. So I'm going to thread my yarn end, which is attached to the motif, and I'm going to start sewing that head down. So I want to come up to the top, and you're just going to use a running stitch, so go through the work and back up 1 stitch along, down 1 stitch over and up. I'm going to turn as we go around the side. When we get back to the start, we're going to finish with our yarn at the back of our work, and we're going to weave in our ends just by going up through a purl bump and down through a purl bump. You do this 6 or 7 times to make sure that end is nice and secure at the back of the work. There we go. There we go, and we'll just trim our end off there. So we're going to repeat that with any other ends. That is our head in place, and we're just going to attach the ears. So for the ears, they're going to go on this decrease side here, and we're going to line up our cast off row with this row of decreases. We're going to leave a little gap at the top of the head and pop it just about there. The direction these knit stitches want to go in is so that they're facing the corner of our work, the top corner of our work. And once we're happy with where that is, we're going to pop a pin in and attach the other one. So for the second ear, it's going to go in the opposite position. So the cast off edge on this decreased side with the direction of our stitches pointing towards the top corner. And we'll pop a pin in there. And then we just need to sew those in place. That's one. And just the other one to sew on, and then I'll show you what our complete square looks like. Here we have our finished Mickey silhouette square. Isn't it absolutely lovely? And this will be the first square to go into our blanket. So I hope you'll join me again and I'll show you how to make the next one. Thank you very much for watching. Bye!